I'd like to call to order the Board of Supervisors meeting for Monday. I'm reading last month's minutes, excuse me. Board of Supervisors meeting for Monday, February 15th at 7 p.m. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Roll call to establish a quorum, if you would, Amy.
Supervisor Mark Hain.
Here.
Chairman Dan Wolfel.
Here.
Supervisor Derek Daniel.
Here.
Supervisor Linda Waite. Here. And Supervisor Jeannie Vogel.
Here.
Jeannie Vogel is with us, but in the small conference room, desiring to be COVID-free. So if you hear a voice, it's not a ghost. She is here, and she has a microphone. Okay? I'd like to do the meet and greet if I could. And Samantha, would you introduce yourself? We'll just go around the room quickly.
Sure. I'm Samantha Koyen. I am from Door County Soil and Water and the Door County Invasive Species team, and I'm really happy to be here.
Great, thank you.
Pam Jorns, JR Vacation Rentals.
Hugh Zettel, Plan Commission.
David Elliott, Town of Bailey's Office.
Jim Mitchie, Town of Sevastopol.
Stephen Hurley, Town of Sevastopol.
Jean Olson, Town of Sevastopol.
Kim Chapman, Bay Shore Drive. Rob Holtz, Town of Sevastopol.
Amy Holtz.
Greg Anderson, Town of Sevastopol.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you very much for introducing yourself.
We got one more, two more.
Did I miss somebody? Sorry, Derek?
Derek Denise, Town of Sevastopol.
And then there is one more. He's already gonna do himself?
Well. Patty Chapman, Golden Drive.
Okay. Public participation, so we'll give everybody an opportunity to spend a couple of minutes to talk to the board on some particular subject. I will tell you, if you're here for the short-term rental discussion, if you haven't seen the agenda was clearly posted. There will be no action taken on the short-term rental ordinance this evening. The purpose of the meeting tonight is a discussion amongst the board to make sure that everybody is on the same level of understanding and knowledge with respect to the proposed ordinance. Any discussions with whether we go forward with this ordinance or not will happen after we have a public hearing, which will be scheduled in either very late April or early May. And subsequent to that, we would have a board meeting in mid-May, our normal board meeting, and at which time we would make a decision as to whether or not we move forward with that ordinance. So just so you understand, and I set your expectations, okay? So if there's anyone here that would like to speak, Jim?
Thank you, Dan. My name is James Mitchie. I reside full-time at 4159 Bayshore Drive in Sevastopol. I'm speaking tonight because it's a gathering of the Planning Commission and of course, the Board of Supervisors. I think I've been attending all but one of the Planning Commission meetings since July of 2020. I'm pretty sure I'm the only person from the public that has done so. I know, Dan, you were there, and maybe in a public capacity. I want to commend the Planning Commission for their work on the short-term planning ordinance, or short-term rental ordinance. They have worked long and hard on what is being proposed to the Sevastopol Board. They've gone way past, in my opinion, way past what should be reasonably expected of a volunteer civic group. Their dedication, research, their attitude, effort, and original thinking have really been exemplary. I want to thank them, thank you, and Godspeed to the board.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Dave?
If I want to speak on, or have questions about the room tax discussion, can I weigh in on that then?
No, I'm not gonna let you talk, Dave.
Okay, then.
No,
Then can I weigh in on,
I'll let you weigh in when we get there.
oh, that's my question. Am I allowed to speak?
I will call on. Okay. No one else, correct? All right. So, the agenda, was it properly noticed?
The agenda was properly noticed.
Motion to adopt would be appropriate.
So move to adopt the agenda for this evening as noticed.
Motion by Linda, second by,
I'll second that.
the voice from the deep, all right? Motion by Linda, second by Jeannie to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. All right, approval of minutes, Board of Supervisors meeting, January 18th, 2021. It's almost what I called tonight's meeting at. You all should have had a chance to take a look at those. And if they meet your approval, then a motion to approve would be in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Supervisors meeting January 18th, 2021.
Motion by Mark, second by,
I'll second.
second by Derek to approve the minutes, Board of Supervisors, January 18th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. We're actually a few minutes ahead, Samantha, but the floor is yours. We have Samantha from Door County Soil and Water to talk to us a little bit about invasive species. I should tell you, after I read through this packet, it scared me. I didn't know there were that many invasive species in our town, much less period. But anyway, you want to do your thing?
Sure. I sent you guys that really hefty packet, and it's not meant to terrify you. It's more meant to be informative. So the packet kind of begins with some of our handouts that we have for our 4 priority species. And if anyone's interested in them, they're on our doorinvasives.org website. So they're free and open to the public. Anyone can copy them, do whatever they want with them. They're completely available. But the main kind of meat and potatoes of the packet is information about where we have our current populations for our 4 priority invasive species, and also talking about our efforts. We highlighted populations that the county will be hoping to treat, given that we have landowner permission. And we highlighted populations that would be eligible for the municipal cost share program. And I know you guys have been trying to participate, and I really hope you get this chance this year. This is why I wanted to send it out nice and early, so we all have a chance to kind of look it over and get an idea of what's happening. And it seems like there is a lot of invasives, but again, just being able to kind of tackle it piece by piece is a really good way. And also knowing that our program constantly changes, we're going to try our hardest to treat all the populations we've identified. And we're going to hope that you guys can do the same. And who knows, maybe we'll get to the point where it's like only a handful of invasive species populations. I don't know if you guys have any questions or if there's anything you guys want to specifically address.
Any of the board? I know I have a couple, but
Well, so we do have an ordinance on file
Correct.
with, for our noxious weeds and invasive plants. So I think we are in compliance with your request that the municipality must have an ordinance on the books.
Yep.
And if you've had a chance to look at our ordinance, it covers everything that we need to cover?
Yes, your guys' ordinance is actually really robust. And looking at it, it's one of the ones that we try to use as almost a template because you guys cover both noxious and invasive species. So hats off to you guys for doing that.
I would like to know how you managed to inventory all of this. I mean, there are locations here that are very obscure, and I mean, I don't frankly know how you found them.
It's a series of, so we do several different efforts when we're doing inventories. So we walk stream corridors, because that's considered public. You can walk, as long as your feet are wet, you can walk up a stream corridor. So we have our seasonals go out and walk stream corridors, and they have binoculars, and so they're just kind of looking at the land. And then we also do driving inventories, so that sounds a lot more scary than it is. We have one seasonal driving and one in the car, and so they pull over and will periodically kind of look out on a field landscape and be able to identify different populations. And then I also, when I'm out and about, hiking, doing whatever, I realize a lot of my downtime is actually me inventorying populations. So it's part of those efforts. And then we also have landowners reach out to us and say, hey, I think I have this on my property. Do you mind if you guys stop by? And that's something we offer. So if anyone at any point thinks they have something, more than, like, reach out to us. We're more than excited to get out there and take a look. And there's no penalty, no one gets fined, there's no fees, it's completely free.
How do you determine who's eligible for the grants?
So the grants, we have right now 7 different grants, and there's different project areas. And so we end up using a GIS analysis. So like, if you imagine it has a project area, and it's if those populations fall within that project area. And those change year to year because it's based on the grants we get. So like, for the next 2-ish years, we're looking at consistency with our grants. But after those 2 years, we may not have those same grants available. And then the, like, kind of that bubble of the project area changes, if that makes sense.
Okay. So you're basically trying to consolidate in the geographic area?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're also doing a like targeted approach of ideally addressing things that, like stream corridors, for instance, would move populations pretty fluidly if they flooded. So we're trying to address these kind of concerned areas, or areas that are also hard to get to as well.
Okay. So with this, what's the procedure that a landowner and/or the town is supposed to take to engage yourself or someone? Because our resident, newly appointed noxious weed person, Derek.
That's exciting.
Just found out tonight, I think, or yesterday, that he was appointed to this fortunate position. And he's not quite adept at answering all of our nuances in terms of questions yet.
So, first thing, congratulations. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or need anything. That's really exciting. So the first step is in that packet, there is a form that you can fill out that initially is like a pre-application saying that you guys want to participate in the cost share program. And that way we can like hold your spot when we approach our land conservation committee with our budget and everything else, because we have to get that all passed through.
Okay, I saw that document in there.
Yep, that's, yeah.
Okay,
And I say, like, again, nothing's guaranteed until things get passed through the board, but they haven't rejected our budget yet, so I'm feeling hopeful. So the first thing is doing that pre-application, and the next is engaging with a contractor. So you have your rough populations in this mailing of kind of what you're looking to treat.
right.
Is engaging with a contractor that you are hoping to work with. There's a list of contractors we have on the doorinvasives.org website, but I can also email it to you guys if you want it. And one of the things that we usually recommend, but that's because we have to put out a request for proposal, an RFP. And it's kind of nice because then you can get a range of what this project will cost. But you don't have to do that. That's just what we do. And if you need help drafting any of this document, like any of these documents whatsoever, we can more than happily provide templates and everything else.
Okay.
So that would be the next step, is engaging with a contractor. And then once you engage with a contractor, they'll give you an idea of what they're hoping to do as far as their control efforts. But,
All right. Well, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't. I know for a fact, and you know, that we have some, I think, Japanese knotweed in the park.
yeah.
And my experience with it is that it's a pretty nasty little plant, and it does appear like bamboo, and you can cut it down and it pops right back up. I mean, if, you know, they could make a lawn out of this stuff, it'd be unbelievable. But I'm sure our newly appointed supervisor will be happy to engage in working through these issues and get you back the form.
Yeah, that sounds great. And
Okay.
again, anything that comes up, feel free to shoot me an email, ask it, like I'm available, and that goes for anyone, any member of the public. We are more than happy to be available.
Okay, that's great. Any questions from the board, Linda?
So would we be wise then to reach out to the owners of those parcels that have been identified? And we also have had a cost share program in the past, and it seems the costs were very reasonable, at least in my mind. The treatment was very reasonable when it comes to expenditures. So would it be wise for us to reach out to these property owners saying, you know, we're offering
Yeah.
to perhaps cost share these expenses with you in an effort to clean these up?
Yeah, that, I would for sure say that would be the next kind of step is, you know, drafting some sort of letter, because you do want to have landowner permission. So
Right.
having them sign, you know, a document saying that they're okay with it getting treated. And like, being open with them about the communication. Luckily, here we are in February, it's still early enough that engaging with them, it shouldn't be an issue. And the nice thing is in the packet, you have all the mailing addresses. And if you guys want, I can also send you an Excel copy, so it's easier when you're producing a mailing list, rather than having it as a PDF.
Okay, that'd be great.
Is there, I did not see a sample letter, and I don't recall what we've sent out previously, Amy. Amy would know better.
We do have a sample letter. I know I sent out a couple of them last year.
Yeah.
And we received no response from the ones that I sent out. But I know that you had been in contact with some other residents who had some in waterways or different places on their land. And they contacted you guys directly. And I want to say Jason Wilkie was the one that sprayed them. And we've had a very good working relationship with him.
I think all of our focus last time pretty much was on Phragmites more than anything.
Yeah.
And this, that's why I was kind of surprised when I went through this as to how many other things we had within the town.
We, had been lucky enough to kind of expand our inventory efforts, but it's also really unlucky because you start finding more populations that you didn't know were there. And you'll also have in those tables, you also have information of who treated what. So if you ever want to review back, you can see what those populations, like who was treating them and where they were treated. Because ideally, we want to have kind of a history record at some point of saying, this what happened in 2020, and here we are in 2023.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right, well, thank you, Samantha. Appreciate your coming out tonight. At least our building was warm.
I know.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, next item on our agenda is follow-up to last month's meeting when Dave Elliott was here, who's here as well tonight, talking about the proposed room tax revenue change. And there were a couple of things after Dave's presentation that we thought we'd like more information on. And one of those items was we were asking, or I should say, as part of the conversation, there was a talk track that said that under the new proposed tax structure, the town would be reimbursing for tourism zone expenses versus having that expense paid for out of destination doors funds. And we did not know the status of that, whether it would get resolved or not prior to this meeting. The other item that was out there was the survey that was done by the destination door to determine the impact that an increase in the room tax rate might have on tourism. And the results of that were not known at the time. And my understanding is that information has now come back to the tourism board. And so a couple of the things that we were interested in understanding were somewhat resolved. The tourism study, and Dave can enlighten us on this if you'd like to, basically shared that the impact for raising the taxes was pretty much minimal, if any. And the issue of the town being reimbursed for the funds that dispensed to the tourism board would be replenished through Destination Door County. And I think in your packets, you saw a couple of different documents to talk to that issue. And Dave, you want to talk to the survey for just a minute, and then we'll go on?
Sure, the survey came back from UW Whitewater. It was actually the tourism zone that did that. It went back to the committee on Saturday. On Saturday, the committee met and voted that the survey did give adequate information, that they voted that they would not harm the elasticity of room rates by increasing room tax. In fact, what the study basically said was that room tax is not a qualifying factor for hurting or not hurting overnight stays rates up and down. So they voted 6-2 to recommend the increase from 5.5% to 8%.
Okay, thank you.
And that goes in front of the tourism zone on official board on Thursday.
The next item that was resolved, at least on the surface, was covered in the memo that came out from Jack and John, talking about the process for which we would be reimbursed for the funding of the tourism zone, which I think we ballparked somewhere in around 6.5% to 7%, right? And the process for that reimbursement was that the destination door would reimburse us out of the revised dollar allowance for tourism-related expenses. And I went back to Dave this week or last week, I forget exactly, because my concern was, although on paper it looked like we would be made whole through destination door, my concern was that unlike Fish Creek, Egg Harbor, and many of the northern communities, we do not have a tourist economy in the sense that we don't have a downtown, we don't have a business community, et cetera. And so for us to have what I was concerned about as legitimate tourism expenses, I wanted to find out whether or not a road or what little expense that we have would fall into the category of reimbursable under the tourism guidelines. So today, and I gave you a copy because I just got it today, I received a note back from John Jarosh with respect to the question I raised through Mr. Elliott. And basically, he came back and said that the net of it is if I read this correctly, and I could not get a hold of John, is that we would have to have true tourism-related development or expenses to be reimbursed. And based on what I've read, I don't believe that although we'd love to keep our roads in great shape for tourists to get here, I don't think that we're going to be able to legitimately categorize those expenses and therefore be reimbursed. So when you take a look at I think the incremental, the projections of the increase was that the town would garner, I think,
And then the other piece that Destination Door County also committed to was more money to the individual community and business associations. So you give $5,000 every year roughly to the Sturgeon Bay or Destination Sturgeon Bay. So Destination Door County would take that off of your hands. So the net gain to you is about $51,000. And then to your point, if you couldn't be reimbursed for expenses, you'd have to take 19 to 20 out. So your net actually becomes 31. However, what I did want to say was you could come up with $20,000 of a project that might be able to benefit your community that you haven't thought of yet, that Destination Door County is more than willing to partner with you to find a way to spend that $20,000 back in your community. So you might not have something right now that you can put that as a budget item towards, but that does not mean that you can't, in partnership with Destination Door County, come up with something that would be beneficial to your residents and tourists.
I think I have one category. I think I have two people that agree. Okay, and that's exactly what was my next point, which is the net, even if we paid out the money and were unable to recapture it, we would still achieve a significant increase in funds. And as Dave also mentioned, we've been doing an additional $5,000 out of our budget to the Sturgeon Bay. There's so many destinations.
Destination Sturgeon Bay.
Destination Sturgeon Bay, thank you. So that, we pick that back up. So, that's really the net of it. So I guess I'd have to ask you guys what your thoughts are, because this is where we left it, not knowing the answer to those questions when we met with Dave last month. So, comment?
Is this the right time to do it with the pandemic? That's one question I kinda had, like, I know it's not a significant increase, it's 3%. You know, people are having financial problems and pandemic, and is this the right time?
We didn't address the timing. The timing would be January 1, 2022 would be the start date. So that's item 1 on that. So hopefully they're saying, hopefully by the end of the summer is what Fauci's saying. So hopefully 22 will be back where it was. With that said, we were only down 7% overall for room tax collections in 2020, even with the pandemic. And given the type of destination that Door County is, which is a lot of people coming here for the outdoors, and we're not like convention style a destination where people gather in large groups. Actually, our destination is only going to continue to grow, and that was the analysis that came out of, it wasn't in the study, but in those meetings with that group, it was saying that it was anecdotally stated that implementing room tax at this time was a no-brainer in my opinion.
It's a no-brainer if you don't have a business.
Anyone else have a comment?
Room tax has gone up every year, and when room tax was implemented in 2007, it saved our community. We were going in the wrong direction, and I feel at this point, and it was reinforced by the study, that another influx of additional dollars to market and support Door County in the right way should only increase our occupancy and overall overnight stay room rates.
Our occupancy is great, and it has been. We've been in business for a long time. You've just been in business for a short time, and your business should pay, maybe you pay a tax on it. Why are you specifically
I've been in
going
business.
against just rooms instead of retail? Let's tax 10% on the grocery stores. Let's tax 10% on the paper.
The reason why this was brought forward by the town of Bailey's Harbor is because the tourism
The
zone.
town of Bailey's Harbor did business for what you did.
The town of Bailey's Harbor I'm the chair of, so I guess
That's
I did
exactly
bring
right.
it forward. And the reason why we brought it forward was because the tourism zone functions on 4% of the room tax collections. They have 196,000, Linda can weigh in on this too. They have $196,000 to, when it was started, deal with 400 permits, and it's increased to 1,264 permits for one staff person. It's not enough money. We're going into a limited reserve right now to pay for a part-time person to keep up. It's not sustainable. We need at least 2.5 people in that office, which is why the budget item for that line item is around $300,000. So
Well, then stop the room tax and quit it, and then give everybody it back, and then let the people do their own advertising.
Sir, the reason why room tax was implemented in 2005 is because we were on the other end of that, and it failed. We were failing. We didn't have a hold on the marketplace. I've been in business for 25 years. The last time we moved room tax forward was because the innkeepers were losing revenue and losing ground. We're trying to stay ahead of that. When you do the study and you look at room tax rates throughout the state, on average, the room tax rate is 6.3% for all people charging a room tax. If you look at everybody's average with 5.5% and higher, the average is 7.3%. Our competition, like the city of Bayfield, which is a similar outdoor destination.
They're not any competition with us. Bayfield does not compete with us.
They have an 8% room tax. Well, the survey and study came back actually that those that have a lower room tax rate are actually the communities that aren't doing as well financially, because the other piece of the puzzle is the more people we have here, the more our town and city and infrastructure have wear and tear that need additional monies to pay for. So the idea here was to be able to fund everything out of it and make everybody whole. And I understand that it's an increase and it's more potential credit card fees that an innkeeper could pay, but when you run the numbers, we're talking about an increase of 2.5% room tax. So for every $1,000 of revenue, if the credit card fee is 3%, would be 75 cents per $1,000 of revenue. So I appreciate and respect the hoteliers and lodging people for bringing people here. I also think we all do a great job in our businesses to continue to invite guests here. It's a collective moving us forward. The reality is the expenses for towns keep going up, and we need a source of revenue to help things. And rather than raise taxes on the locals and do so, to me, it made the most sense to put the burden on the visitor that comes here, because they've shown that they can afford it, and they've shown that our occupancy numbers are growing.
Yes, Linda, go ahead.
Well, I have some questions.
Go ahead.
I did some calculations as well, comparing the current 5.5% room tax, the 30% that we collect, and then calculating it at 8%. And as Mr. Elliott stated, it is about $43,000 difference based on current room tax revenues. And like Mr. Elliott also said, the Tourism Zone Commission going from monitoring 400 permits to monitoring nearly 1,300 permits definitely increases their administration costs as well. So with an increase in room tax, even if the town did have to support the tourism zone directly, I think we'd still be okay. Anywhere from, if we just kicked in our 6.6%, it would be roughly $6,600 based on an extra $100,000 for the commission. Or if we had to foot the bill for like $262,000 to support the commission, obviously then we're looking at $17,000. So the room tax increase, I think, is neither here nor there. I do have some questions, though, about, right now, as our chairman mentioned, we do not have a business association. So we do have our strategic marketing partnership with the city of Sturgeon Bay, which I believe they receive about $22,000 a year, plus the $5,000 in our annual budget that we've been contributing. So I would have a question as to, does that stay the same, or is that going to change?
It changes.
And then my second question is, it talks about a grant being used to reimburse municipalities. And we all know that grants come and then they go. So I find the grant portion a little confusing as well.
I can address both points. The destination of our county is committed 19% of their, of the increased amount of room tax dollars back to basically the same program, the reimbursement program you're talking about. And that amounts to $1 million. Right now, the program is at $400,000. Does that answer that? Would you follow how that would work? So that would actually increase as it stands. Go ahead.
But as our chairman mentioned, can we quantify that we have spent that amount per, with stats,
That's
section
different.
66?
Okay, so there's two different things. You asked about the 5,000 and the 22,000.
Oh, you're talking about the community?
Yes, the
Okay,
community
all right,
investment.
sorry.
So that would be taken over by Destination Door. That 5,000 would come off of your plate, and Destination Door
Okay.
County would take care of it. So that's that, to answer that piece. Does that answer that piece of the puzzle?
Yes, thank you.
The second piece, it's called a grant because it's got to be separate from related to the tourism zone payments. So it gets convoluted, folks, because I'm trying to find a way to piece together this big puzzle, right? So I could have come to you and say, guess what, and you know this too, Linda, we've talked about it. Right now, we have a 66% goes to Destination Door County, 4% goes to the tourism zone, and 30% comes back to the municipalities. The attorneys of the tourism zone don't like that. It's against state statute. It should be a 70-30 clean split. In every other municipality throughout the state, the municipality covers the administrative cost of the tourism zone. So the burden falls, if we do a 70-30 split, the burden would then fall upon the municipalities. I was trying to find a way to get that money back. And Destination Door County said they had a good amount of money. As innkeepers here have said, they're doing well, so they're spending the money well. We plan to have most of that money come back. But we went to Destination Door County and said, can you commit up to $300,000 to reimburse those communities? But we had to call it something else. You can't call it a reimbursement because it has to be for tourism-related infrastructure as the chairman went through. So it's different than the rest of the money you get. The 30% you can spend on whatever you want.
Right.
That grant program has to be spent on tourism-related infrastructure. And what Destination Door County is committed to is working with the municipalities to find out how to do that. The other part, and you will become aware of this at our next tourism zone meeting, is to discuss with Destination Door County an intergovernmental agreement between the tourism zone and Destination Door County that further roots out how that grant thing works. But it's on the that's made up of municipal people, so we're gonna lobby hard to find a way to make sure that the money can be spent as loosely as possible underneath the state statutes requirements, because that's why it's called a grant. They have to follow those specific state statute-driven investments.
Thank you.
I did ask Pam to give me an idea what that number would be, but she had not gotten back to me in anticipation of the same question that you had, so. Okay. Mark? Yes?
Just one question. A couple people have texted me, they can't hear you, so if you could pull the microphone a little closer to you. They
It
can't hear
doesn't
on
come any
their-
closer.
On their channel. And then secondly is, if Sevastopol changes to the 6-night minimum, isn't that gonna affect a lot of things with all your numbers? I mean, right now, the average is 3.2 to 3.4 nights stay. So if they go to a 6-night stay, that's gonna cut half the money.
Correct. The amount of money that the town would get would go down, and the amount of money that they'd be responsible for the tourism zone would also go down because their percentage contributions
So that would be a negative impact on our
To the-
community by going to 6-night stay.
That's
that
really
is a
not,
question more for the town board.
right, that's not a topic for discussion at this moment in
I
time.
appreciate the question, and I'm not disagreeing with your assessment, but I'm not
Right.
here to talk about the short-term rental ordinance. We had our own in Bailey's Harbor and our own battles with that one.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Good enough. Any other questions, Mark?
How many municipalities have said yes and how many have said no? Do you have a number of definite yeses, definite no's at this time?
I have 4 yeses, and I don't have any no's. Everybody else was in so I've spoken to 11 different municipalities, including you. 4 of the other 10 have said yes. They are the Village of Sister Bay, the Village of Egg Harbor, the Town of Bailey's Harbor, and the Town of Liberty Grove. The Town of Washington Island was waiting for confirmation that Destination Door County would put that 19% aside to go pay back the Washington Island Chamber of Commerce, and they're waiting for the commitment of the $300,000 back to the municipalities to reimburse for this, and they were also waiting for the results of the survey, or the study that was coming out. So I was told by their town chairman, as soon as that information is done, which it is now completed, I'm going back to them. The town of Gibraltar, same exact thing. When I first went to them, understand that there was a lodging fee, a lit fee permit on the table. That's been taken off. So they were looking for that to be taken off. The town of Gibraltar also said they didn't want any date prior to January 1, 2022. Again, we've adjusted the date to comply with that. So the town of Washington, the town of Gibraltar have stated that they would move forward with it under those conditions. The Village of Ephraim I've presented to twice. They are also debating a Pratt tax. That's something that all of us as townships and the city cannot do. Under state statute, the city went after and tried to get a change for that, but wasn't able to do so. Who else have I spoken? I've spoken to Jacksonport, and they were waiting for confirmation of these things as well. And the town of Egg Harbor was also waiting for confirmation, and I think that's everybody.
Jacksonport did not vote?
They did not vote.
Okay.
They were waiting for the confirmation, and they wanted more information, just like you guys did.
Okay. Anything else? So really, it's up to us at this point. We can either move ahead with this, we can roll it for another month, give you some time to think about it, or whatever your pleasure might be.
I think we should roll it for another month, get some more discussion on the table. That's my feeling on it. One problem I have with it is, several problems. One coming to mind is with, there's my chair. Hang on.
Big dinner?
Hang on, everybody. I'm back. So if we don't have a project that we come up with every few years, we're gonna lose that money, correct? You know what I mean, we're gonna lose out
We'll lose a portion of the
a
money.
portion of the money, so.
If we were gonna gross 40,000 and we had to spend whatever, we'll lose some subset of it, but we'll still be on the positive side.
But we're already on the positive side.
Right. I don't disagree with you, I mean, it's
Okay.
just, but, yeah,
It's-
it's kinda you spend $1, you get 2. So,
Are you asking for our opinion on whether we want a rate increase
Well,
or
it's
not?
up-
Or are we holding that until next meeting?
I can do whatever you want. We can roll it for one more month if you prefer to give it a little more thought, or if you wanna take action tonight, we can do that. So it's up to the board. You know, you've heard some positives and negatives and see what's up. I'm sorry, Brad.
Well, we were waiting for the report from the UW Whitewater, and it does indicate that the report supports that a raise in the tax rate. They did not feel that tourists would seek lodging in other counties, and they felt that the tourists would pay for it. The report said that changes in tax rates do not significantly affect local revenues. Looking at other tourist areas similar to Door County, I believe most of them have the 8% rate. I would not be opposed to an 8% room tax rate.
Okay. Derek, got any thoughts?
I'm in favor, and as far as spending goes, between the parks, I think we can do that.
Okay, I kinda figured that might be where we were tracking. How about our ghost?
The ghost agrees. Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
the ghost is speaking, if it's all right.
that's good.
We are not going to be meeting in March, so therefore, when you're talking about putting it off, we're talking about April then?
Correct. Okay.
I just got a text from Randy Halstead, who's watching, and I talked to him before this meeting. He said they did vote against raising room tax at their last meeting.
Okay.
So, just FYI.
Oh, okay, they didn't they didn't at the meeting that I was at in December, so.
Okay.
Okay, so where would you like to go?
Could I address
looking
the
for a motion?
supervisor's one comment and his concern with it?
Last one, yes.
Okay, so you asked about, would it detrimentally hurt? The challenge, and Linda can address this too, at some point, we're gonna have to come back to the municipalities, and if we don't raise room tax, the tourism zone's gonna have to come back to the municipalities for more money. So I'm just putting that's not a threat at all, I'm not putting it out that way, but I'm just, but
Kinda
but
sounds
I'm
like you're
just
holding
saying,
silver
like,
barrel.
we're functioning in a depressed budget, we don't have enough money to move it forward. I'm just, that's the reality of where we're at.
So, there's,
All the businesses.
yeah, I was gonna say, so there's,
It's a big deal. You're a business too, it's just everybody else.
yeah, that's, what Brad just said, that Destination Door County Tourism, it's a business, correct? Basically
No,
functions as a
I'm not talking
business?
about Destination Door County, I'm
Or
talking
the,
about
the tourism,
zone, correct.
yeah, that's kind of functioning as a business. So if you don't have enough income, don't you have to cut corners or do something to work within your budget?
The trouble is and you can look at our budget, everything is run, actually down to the bare bones. Like that is the most efficient, one of the most efficient governmental organizations that we have in the county. It's actually recognized by the state as doing an incredible job with the resources that we have available. It's a set budget that doesn't have opportunity to raise any money. You can't do sponsorships. There's no other sources of income, period, for the tourism zone other than room tax collection right now.
I think you have to take a look, Mark, at the fact that the numbers have tripled since this started. You know, they've gone from 400 and some permits to 1,200 and something, and what Dave says is right on the money. I mean, there's no opportunity to increase their budget. So, yeah, at some point in time, they probably will. Not knowing myself, but it makes sense that you can't have a 300% increase in your in your burden and not have anybody to manage through that. So, and I know I talked with Kim Roberts, and I'm sure Linda has, and others, and saying, okay, here's ABC, go track them down, figure out why they don't have a permit, because I think it's important that all of the rental people are on the same playing field. There shouldn't be an advantage for someone operating under the radar. So, and that's one of the key things she does, is go out and finds those people and brings them into the fold, so.
And even with the increased number of permits that are happening every month throughout Door County, their 2021 budget, and David could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was almost flat compared to the 2021 or the 2020 budget, right? It was almost identical to last year's budget.
Yeah, room tax collections were down 7%
Yeah.
from
So they
2020 to
kept-
2019, and when
kept
you're
it.
looking at 4%, they're only receiving 4% of those funds, so the income was down ever so slightly, and we budgeted as such, but we had to increase because we can't keep up, because the number of permits keeps going up, and the demand and the question that those permit holders has only increased because of the marketplace that's out there that exists.
And, you know, to be perfectly honest, the majority of those permits are short-term rentals that require a little bit more hand-holding, I would say, than maybe some of the traditional lodging. So it does take time.
Okay. So we can either carry it over to April, or if you choose to propose through motion, we can deal with that tonight, either way. Makes no difference to me.
Do we have a deadline, David? Can I ask, you know, what would be your latest date that you would want a response from municipalities?
So there is no deadline. However, I do listen to innkeepers. I've talked to a whole bunch of them. I've called them. I've asked them questions. I've tried to work with them on every single piece of the puzzle. They've asked for as much notice as possible for when an increase takes place, because come April is when people start making reservations for the following year and for this year. So they would love 12 months, but I've been told if there's a way that they could have at least 8 months' notice to be able to tell guests when they're booking for the next time they're here, that they get the most leeway as possible for that. Because they will have to deal with telling customers that if they book now, they book for 2020, 2021, the rate is 5.5%, but if they book for January 1st, 2022, and we move forward with this, the rate's gonna be 8%, so they want as much time as possible to notify. So yes, you can wait longer. I wish it was March instead of April, but what it does do is it means that getting to the end point of 13 municipalities is delayed, which means letting the lodging do their job is harder and harder. Just so everybody's aware, the committee that made the recommendation to increase from 5.5% to 8% is made up all of innkeepers, and 6 of the 8 voted in favor to move it forward.
Greg Anderson has his hand up.
Yes?
What I don't understand is that I believe that the increase to 8% generates about $2.5 million in additional revenue. But it's my understanding that $950,000 of that has not been defined in terms of what it's going to go for or what it's going to be used for. If I'm wrong with that, I'd be corrected.
You are not wrong in that, considering that the monies would not be spent until 2023. It's hard to say what that money should be absolutely spent on at this time, as the market changes significantly moving forward. Understand that if room tax is implemented in 2022, the majority of those funds don't become back to the municipalities or to Destination Door County until at the earliest some in June for May revenue, but it's really not until October, November that those revenues are received. So to create a plan for $1 million of marketing almost 2 years in advance becomes problematic.
Yeah, I just don't understand why you increase it in when 35 or 40% of it, you don't know what you're gonna use the money for.
The Destination Door County has a 3-year plan that they're in the middle of right now. It's put forward that has where those dollars and percentages are based. It's based highly on percentages. Again, a lot of the revenue that we're looking for at this point, they've designated basically half of that to help the municipalities to reinvest in tourism-related infrastructure, which is supposed to lead to more overnight stays. And they've invested the other significant part back into the community and business associations that also constantly promote to bring in more overnight stays. So those are partnerships that they're fostering. And again, the overall buys that they use in different programs, whether it's on social media, within the web, any TV or advertising that they do, or any print, or any PR campaigns, basically shift the percentage dollars. There's also been a lot of consideration to put money into other overall granting programs, but until they know that the money is available, they can't look at creating those programs. And a lot of this is also to help the municipalities. Again, the municipalities' costs of road repair and everything else has been discussed at this board, keep going up. And those monies are going to be quickly spent back into the infrastructure to help our municipalities and our communities and our locals and visitors have a better way of life here.
Okay, yes.
If we support the 8% increase this evening, will it fall to the Tourism Zone Commission and Destination Door County then to come up with the plan on the 30/70? If we support the 8% increase tonight, are we committed that the town will cover its share of the Tourism Zone Commission costs, or are we only supporting an 8% increase?
It depends upon how you want to word it. The letter of intent and resolution that I shared with you the last time does commit to the town taking on the responsibility of the tourism zone cost. It has to come to the coverage of those fees, that expense has to be covered by something. So what the idea is, a letter of intent, the resolution is that you'd increase the room tax from 5.5% to 8% with a 70-30 split, with the operations of the tourism zone costs covered by the municipalities. And then the step would be is that then gets given to the tourism zone when 13 municipalities have signed on. That then would be the impetus to create a new resolution, an ordinance that all municipalities would sign the same document instead of 13 different ones. And then prior to that, there would be an intergovernmental agreement between the tourism zone and Destination Door County to finalize, or not to finalize, because Destination Door County is already committed to it, but to put it into an intergovernmental agreement arrangement as well.
So are you with the room tax or are you with Destination Door County?
I am the town chair of Bailey's Harbor, sir. I'm the publisher of the Peninsula Pulse. I'm the publisher of Door County Living. I am the vice chairman of the Door County Tourism Zone.
Vice chairman of the Door County Tourism Zone.
I'm not with Destination Door County.
So you're not doing anything with Destination Door County? You're not involved with them at all?
I do work for them on occasion, yes, but I don't work for that organization. I'm not an employee of that organization.
So to move this ball forward, here's what I propose. We'll make life simple. Being an old marketing guy and having been in sales for years, if you couldn't get the customer to close the order, then you would ask for a letter of intent. So I would propose that the board send in a letter of intent saying it is our intention to support the increase to 8%, but it is our intention at this moment and has not been affirmed by the board. And we will make this decision at our next monthly board meeting after giving everybody an opportunity to solicit or be given any additional input. Does anybody have any issues with doing that?
I like that. I would even second that motion.
All right. So with that as a backdrop, any other comments before we move forward? All right.
What does that officially mean, can I ask?
I'm sorry,
What
say
do you,
again?
what does that officially mean you're
It
doing?
officially means that we are looking very favorably at supporting what you're asking us to do, so that you have a sense for where we are as a board, since we have 4 people that seem to feel that it's the right course of action. But we're giving ourselves and the public an opportunity to think about it a little bit more, and we'll take action at our April meeting,
Okay, thank you for your time.
okay? So,
One more question.
one more question.
For David. So I did find my resolution from the Bailey's, the proposed one from the Bailey's Harbor. Do you perceive any of that changing, David, if, you know, because I don't think this talks about a grant or anything like that? I
No,
don't see
so-
grant mentioned in here.
No, so the deal is you have to get 13 municipalities of 19 to sign on to change the ordinance. So the grant money could change. Right now, Destination Door County is committed up to $300,000. Well, in 3 years, if the tourism zone needs more money, if we have 1,800 permits, I'm not saying that's true, but I'm just putting it out there, that number could be increased to 350,000 instead of 300. So rather than that have be part of an agreement that we need 13 signatures on, it makes more sense to make that agreement that's between the tourism zone and Destination Door County, so that that can change when necessary, as opposed to be part of a intergovernmental 19 municipality agreement.
Okay. All right, that being the case, that's the plan of action. And you want to take me as the person who started this whole process through motion, and Linda with a second. If there's no further discussion, let's just vote on doing this, and we'll move ahead. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Mark, can I hear from you one way or the other?
I said I,
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, motion carried. Let's move ahead. Thanks, Dave, appreciate your trip down. We'll send you off a document, and we'll finalize it in our early April meeting.
Thank you.
All right, temporarily lost my place. All right, next item is, I'm going to give this floor over to Amy, who took a couple minutes last week, I think more than a few, to update the notice of records access. This is a requirement of the state, and it kind of deals with open records requests. Amy, you want to talk about this for just a couple minutes and what we need to do?
Sure. So, years back when Leo was still the chairman, Linda had drafted a document that states a notice of records access. And so what I did was I cleaned it up and put everything current in it, the current fees, what, you know, who is in charge of each commission or committee. And so I think we just need to take action that we've updated these records, and this is now what it is.
So from your perspective, do we need a motion to approve this?
I would, just so it's on file.
Pardon me?
I personally would, just so that
Okay.
it's on file.
All right.
And you feel those photocopy, those costs, or those charges are adequate to cover the cost of paper? And what if they're color? I mean, because we do have to pay for color toner. Maybe we should have one, a color
I could.
copies too,
Yep, I
like
could
50
update it.
cents or something for a
I could
color.
update it to reflect that as well.
Just a suggestion.
Okay. Any other thoughts from anyone? If not, a motion would be in order to approve this and let Amy post it.
I'll move to approve the revised notice of records access and cost with that slight addition for color copies.
Okay. Motion by Linda,
Second?
second by Derek. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, done. Thanks, Amy. And it may not have to be updated after the next election, which would be a pleasant position to be in, I suppose. All right, next item is authorization of payment for March 2021 vouchers, bills, and claims in Louisville Board meeting. So we would need a motion to approve that so Amy can keep all of our people happy.
I'll make a motion to authorize the payments of March 2020 vouchers, bills, and claims in lieu of board meeting.
All right, motion by Mark, second by
I will second that.
Jeannie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. All right, last item under new business is short-term rental ordinance, discussion only, as I discussed at the beginning of the meeting. And since some of the board is aware of this and some of the board is just has a cursory understanding of what's involved, the Plan Commission, which Linda is the chair of, has put together a document that addresses many of the nuances of this particular ordinance. And so what's going to happen is Linda, with the help of Hugh Zettel, who is a member of the Plan Commission, will take us through this booklet that they've provided us and give everybody on the board an opportunity to understand what each little component means, what the impact is, clarify any questions that you have, and the output would be is to give back to the Plan Commission any concerns, questions, whatever, clarifications that need to be made before this comes back before the board, and before the board would schedule a public hearing in probably the early May timeframe, and to move this ball forward if that's what happens. So I think that's a good intro, and I'll turn the floor over to Linda. And this is a discussion amongst the board, so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did put together just a brief background on how we came to this point, and then I'll introduce Hugh, who will go through the information for us. So in recent years, many property owners have decided to rent out their homes for overnight stays. And that has resulted in neighbors reaching out to their local governments about the changing fabric and character of their residential neighborhoods. Well, Wisconsin legislatures stepped in, and as part of the 2017-2019 budget and the resulting Act 59, some statutory changes were made to protect the homeowner's right to rent out their home. It required them to obtain a tourist rooming house license from the state of Wisconsin, and gave local governments the ability to regulate short-term rentals consistent with the new law. In 2018, shortly after the enactment of Act 59, the town of Sevastopol also began receiving complaints and concerns relative to the growing number of short-term rentals in our neighborhoods. A committee began working on an ordinance in 2018, and the matter was subsequently transferred to the Plan Commission. During 2019 and for a good portion of 2020, our Plan Commission spent considerable time with renewing our comprehensive plan, and then the Quarry Bluff project came along, and work on the short-term rental ordinance resumed this past July of 2020. So after 10 meetings and input from owners and neighbors, and after much research and a compilation of facts and figures, the Plan Commission now makes this submission to the town board. I'll briefly go over the items that are presented. You all were provided with binders that are tabbed, so the items presented for discussion include an analysis and status of short-term rentals in the town, a summary of feedback from residents, neighbors, and property owners, a draft ordinance on regulating short-term rentals, how to accomplish enforcement of that ordinance, a proposed implementation timeline, and a proposed application process with some help tools. Our Plan Commission Vice Chair, Hugh Zettel, has put much effort into gathering this information, so I'm going to turn it over to him now as we go through these items.
Great, thank you, Linda. Laddie, is the audio okay? Can you hear me? Right. Great. Just quickly, my name is Hugh Zettel, and I serve as the Vice Chairman of the Plan Commission. I'm a fourth-generation Door County native. My parents operated a family construction business, as well as cherry and apple orchards on the Sawyer side of Sturgeon Bay. My wife and I have owned our home on Glidden Drive since 2014 and have lived there full-time since 2019. Our proposed ordinance efforts, just to build on what Linda said, are not unique to our town. As you know, there's existing STR ordinances on the books in the city of Sturgeon Bay and the village of Egg Harbor. There's a proposed ordinance in Bailey's Harbor, and there's ordinance development underway in the town of Liberty Grove. Each of these communities are unique with respect to the existence of city center, existence of neighborhoods, and reliance on tourism in their local economies. We've examined at least 18 ordinances implemented at the town, city, village, and county levels in the state, as well as ordinance frameworks provided by the Wisconsin Town Association and STR policies that have developed across the U.S. While our town is unique, we share similar challenges being addressed in communities globally. Yes, globally. Trying to balance neighborhoods and areas with short-term rentals is a global challenge that exists. Lastly, the town's comprehensive plan has been used as a guide as we create this draft ordinance. In the plan, the town's residents told us they value the rural, rustic, and quiet solitude that living in the town provides. The town's operating budget is derived predominantly from residential property owners and agriculture. Commercial activity is welcomed and encouraged along the designated commercially zoned corridors outlined in the plan. As Plan Commission members and as members of the town board, we heard the sentiment of preserving the rural and rustic nature, low traffic, etc. We heard that loud and clear during the Quarry Project CUP process. And as you took full measure as a board of that sentiment then, it most certainly applies now as you consider this proposed ordinance. I never thought I would have a binder of information as large as what I maintained during the Quarry CUP evaluation process. But the information gathered and reviewed by me and the hardworking members of the Plan Commission for this effort dwarfs that project. There's a lot of information to cover, so I'll try to make this review session as efficient and effective as possible for the board. The first document is the analysis of STRs in the town. When we had our first meeting back in July, we had heard various concerns from residents as well as STR stakeholders, and we came up with a set of questions that we thought we would need to answer. And as much as possible, we wanted to make sure we can quantify them as much as possible. And the first tab is the analysis of short-term rentals. The document, basically we started to look at 4 questions. So if you go to page 3, we wanted to ask ourselves, how many short-term rental dwellings are there in the town? Do these STRs have tourist rooming house licenses as deployed by the Wisconsin Department of Agricultural, Tourism, and Consumer Protection, otherwise known as DATCAP? How many residential dwellings are locally owned? And to what extent do the STRs adhere to the private on-site wastewater treatment system, or POUTS, capacities in their listings? So let's walk through the data real briefly, because I have an update to this based on more current reports that have become available. As of October of last year, we had about 66 residential STRs. About 91% of those are located near the shores of Green Bay and Lake Michigan because of the concerns regarding POUTS and concerns about groundwater contamination. We wanted to assess to see how many are both a problem for groundwater as well as surface water contamination. About 35% of the STR owners list their Sturgeon Bay zip code as their tax billing zip code, so that was our proxy for looking at, was someone a local resident or were they out of town? Real quickly to page 5. At that time, with the residents that we identified via the Door County Tourism Zone Commission roster of STRs in our town, we noted that only 56% of those were licensed by DATCAP. Wisconsin law requires that owners offering short-term rentals must acquire a license before they can list their property for availability, including a passing of a pre-license inspection. And that is through the regulation from the Consumer Protection Chapter 72. The DATCAP license term runs between July 1st and June 30th, and that time period also coincides with the way the tourism zone runs their annual calendar year. For the other challenge with the Door County Tourism Zone report is that it's their best efforts and it's a great starting point for identifying STRs. However, when we look at the DATCAP report to determine whether or not the people in that report were also had a permit by the Door County Tourism Zone, we identified 3 tourist rooming houses or STRs in the town that were not listed in the Door County Tourism Zone list. So, you know, as everyone knows, it's a challenge to keep track of STRs. It's a very seasonal activity. Some may pop up, you know, in the spring of the year for the summer season, disappear in the fall. New owners come on board because it's, you know, in a couple hours you can have a listing on Airbnb and VRBO and off you go. And in many cases, some of those new owners don't know about the things you have to do to get a revenue license from the state to work with the Door County Tourism Zone, and they've got a lot of information on their site relative to a get started list. And I think that's helped quite a bit, but you know, it's not accurate relative to all the things that they need to do. When we looked and presented this DATCAP information on the fact that, you know, there were 44% that didn't have a DATCAP license, one of the pieces of feedback that we got from stakeholders was that because of COVID, the state provided a grace period for them to renew their license for July and gave them until the end of December of last year to basically re-up. And so we looked further into that and we noted, and that's on page 6, relative to the folks that didn't have a DATCAP license, you know, if they were a member of the tourism zone, were they also listed in the tourism zone as having a property that was active in 2019, and were they also active in 2018? So if you go back, 21 out of the 30 were active with the tourism zone 3 years earlier. So our hunch at that time was they basically, you know, had and were operating a STR back then because they had the permit and were operating with the tourism zone, but still did not have a DATCAP license. So as part of that, in our November meeting, I believe, we provided, the Plan Commission asked that we send a letter to the state DATCAP representative for the county and basically provide him a list of all the short-term rentals in the town, and basically ask them at the state to confirm, you know, that these folks did have a DATCAP license. I believe we did that on December 17th, and on the 18th they replied that they have reviewed all the names and they had sent compliance letters to those that were on that list that did not have a DATCAP license, and that's the current status. We have not followed up. We'll show the numbers again here shortly based on the January report from the state, but I think because of the holiday end-of-year season, there may not have been people that have actively worked on those at this time. The other question we asked is relative to tourism zone licenses, DATCAP licenses, how does the town fit with the other municipalities in the county? So on page 7, we just looked at some of the data to just kind of benchmark ourselves amongst the other municipalities. Just by way of of a reference, Door County has more DAT-cap licenses, and again, this is across all lodging types, whether it's a hotel, inn, short-term rental, B&B, et cetera. They have more licenses than any other county in the state, and that still holds true as of July. And second place is Vilas County, another large outdoor tourism county in the northern part of the state. If you look at the tourism zone licenses and DAT-cap across all the towns, you can basically see that, we list 991 DAT-cap licenses for Door County, but you can see that out of the 1,272 permits that the tourism zone has, we were only able to match up 910 with the tourism zone licenses. So we know that there's a gap some across the county for people that have permits for their short-term rentals but are not licensed by the state. And then this is for all lodging types, and then the far right side, we took a stab at how many what does a short-term rental compliance look like countywide, and we did that by looking at the unit number in the Door County Tourism Zone reports. Typically for a short-term rental tour, they are noted as a unit of 1 compared to hotels or B&B, bread and breakfast, et cetera, which would have a larger number greater than 1 that would represent those types of facilities. And so we're kind of we're sitting at about a 56% range for estimated DAT-cap compliance, and many of the other municipalities fare better, especially for those that have a large number of permits. The largest municipality that has licensees is the town of Liberty Grove. Okay, probably the area that had generated a lot of the discussion, and just by virtue to close the DAT-cap report. Again, DAT-cap makes sure that the property is safe, for the renters that are there. The DAT-cap licensing process includes a water sample test if you have a private well. They ensure that there's proper fire protection measures, detectors, carbon monoxide, escape egress from the property that's adequate, especially looking, say, at bedrooms. They check for proper sizing of rooms, and they do a calculation of where the people are sleeping. They do a calculation that establishes the maximum number of people that can be in those sleeping rooms, and that is also in their regulation relative to how they define that. They also talk about bathroom, trash management, and other hygiene measures within the property. And the other thing we noted is, as we get to the POUTS discussion, DAT-cap, talks about a requirement that they have a functioning private on-site wastewater treatment system, and that it follows the existing state regulations that govern that area. But they don't look at the POUTS or examine it. That is the onus is on the property owner to do that in consultation with the county sanitarian as necessary. So they don't check on anything about the POUTS relative to the capacity of the POUTS and what that means for capacity of the residents. And they don't do any tests or checks or inspections on the POUTS itself, because that is not within their purview as in their state department. Okay. So when we talk about POUTS, one of the things we did is we looked at the POUTS capacities as listed in the sanitation tab in the land records portal of the county. So when you go to your property, there's a sanitation tab. You can click on that, and it tells what kind of system you have, what the permit number is, when it was installed. There's a maintenance tab that shows typically the 3-year maintenance that's done on it, as well as any other activity that occurs on that system. In addition, what we did is we looked at the time. There were 47 short-term rental listings that were on the website, Airbnb, VRBO, et cetera. And we looked at the maximum occupancy that were listed on those websites, And we did a calculation based on the septic system itself relative to its tank size, et cetera, to determine, what the maximum number of people could be in that house. And the state basically based your POUTS capacity on the number of bedrooms that the house is permitted for. So if you built a 3-bedroom house, your POUTS is designed for 3 bedrooms and 2 people per bedroom. So your POUTS is designed for 6 people total. If you had subsequently converted your den to another bedroom, your house is still a 3-bedroom house. It's not a 4-bedroom house when you added that extra bedroom, because your house was designed for that 3-bedroom house that you were permitted to build. So that's how they look at that from a sanitation perspective. There's some findings below that just show the range of the 55%, 21 had listings, or 21 were below the POUTS capacity or at it, 17 were 2 to 4 persons above the POUTS capacity, and 9 were 6 to 9 persons above the capacity. Now, as part of this discussion, Supervisor Waite contacted the county sanitarian just to make sure we could clarify about this, bedrooms and how many persons per bedroom, that sort of thing. And so I would, if you please the board, I'd just like to read his reply. And this was on August 31st of 2020 to Linda Waite, town supervisor, and she forwarded it to the Plan Commission as part of our activities. And it's from the county sanitarian, Mr. John Teichler. Good afternoon. No, the county does not exceed the code requirements. Any more occupancy of more than 2 people per bedroom would require a variance from the Wisconsin Administrative Code on private on-site wastewater treatment systems. Variances can only be approved by the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services. A variance form would have to be completed by the property owner and sent to DSPS Green Bay office for review and approval. A rental unit with 16 occupants would be an 8-bedroom residence with a wastewater flow of 1,200 gallons per day. This is a big concern statewide in all counties that are facing this issue on how to control occupancy on rental units which are served by private on-site waste systems. Overloading a POUTS size for a 3-bedroom residence obviously will result in system failure. Yours, John Teichler, County Sanitarian. Okay, so one of the things we're going to have to do in our process, if you look at page 9, and this is again going to be something that's part of the application process. Since DATCAP doesn't look at POUTS capacity, they look at the size from a rooming perspective of the house, what's safe. So what we're going to have to do is we'll pull the records that are within the town and basically look and see what houses were permitted for. Look at what the house was permitted for, and then look at the sanitarian records for what's on their database for their POUTS, and then make those calculations based on the number of bedrooms to determine what the POUTS capacity is for that house. And based on that, that's going to be the maximum number of occupants that will be allowed for the town license, and that's how that process is envisioned to work. There are some challenges that we have in the town. We have septic systems that were first permitted when they started that process, I believe, in 1966, and those POUTS systems predate that period of time. And so you'll see in notes where in many cases they estimated capacities based on how much they pumped out on their annual or on their 3-year period. That's also going to be a challenge since we have some properties that have aging systems that we have to take a look at. Quickly on page 10, one of the other discussions that were talked about is regarding the minimum night stay. And this is just data that was provided to the Plan Commission in its deliberation. And that was basically looking at number of STRs that had minimum night stays, and in just about all cases, people have their homes with higher minimum night stays during the peak periods, which is typically June through August, or in that range. Some people start their peak in their, when you look at their websites, they start in the May timeframe and go through the end of September. Others start in June or mid-June and go to mid to late August, et cetera. But this was just to inform the Plan Commission as we looked at, peak versus off-peak and minimum night stays sensitivity. So that really kind of concludes how we looked at some of this data in order to, guide our discussions relative to the framework of the ordinance that we initially started with, again, based on a template provided by the Wisconsin Town Association, and then incorporating feedback we learned from other ordinances along the way. Now, if you go to the second tab, this is basically just a one-pager, quick update on an update to some of those metrics based on the fact that the Door County Tourism Zone published a report on December 2nd, 2020, which updates their roster of lodging facilities within the municipalities. And in addition, the state publishes on a quarterly basis an updated list at DATCAP for all the lodging facilities. So with that current information, here's kind of the current status that we have. There are 73 short-term rentals in the town of Sevastopol. 70 of them were identified to have a tourism zone permit. 3 of them, in addition, there were 3 of them that had a DATCAP license and no tourism zone permit associated with that. The feedback I got from that is it's typically less expensive just to keep renewing a DATCAP license, which is a little over $100 some, as opposed to canceling that and then starting over fresh. So that's why someone may not have been active for a while and didn't have a tourism zone permit, but yet had a state license. And then through the help of the Tourism Zone Commission, they helped us identify 9 short-term rentals that were identified as inactive. So that nets us out at 64 short-term rentals. 48% don't have a DATCAP license still. 60% are operating above their pouts. And again, that is comparing their max occupancy and their dwelling that they're listing on their site versus the pouts, the estimated pouts capacity. And again, we really can't confirm that number until you pull building records to really look at that in conjunction to what the permit says the pouts is designed for. That's on the sanitarian tab in the Door County Land Records portal. 66% of the owners are outside of the Sturgeon Bay zip code. And of the 64 STRs, 16 or 25% are LLCs, or limited liability corporations. We've seen this as a growing trend where basically the houses are operated as a business, with taking full advantage of the business expenses and tax advantages that running it as a commercial enterprise provide. The short-term rental quantity may change based on the proposed work if we sign on with Granicus. Granicus does a very high level or a deep dive on address identification. You can see the page I kind of input there on the right-hand side. That's basically the town of Sevastopol that Granicus was able to define and actually provided with an initial estimate of what they thought were the number of properties. In addition to the number of properties, they also identified the various marketing platforms, whether it was Airbnb, Travelocity, VRBO, et cetera, relative to what platform they were using to advertise their locations. So they were able to provide that sort of detailed information. I'll pause here for a moment to see if there's any questions relative to this overview material that people might have.
Questions, anyone on the board?
Hugh? It's Jeannie.
Yes.
Do you have, does DATCAP have the maximum, I think you said there's a maximum people per, do they base it on a bedroom? They go by square footage, or do you know that?
Yes, I actually pulled that page It's in, again, it's in the administrative code, ATCP, Chapter 72, I believe, 144. Basically, Jeannie talks about the size of sleeping room. It's item 2B. Every sleeping room shall be of sufficient size to afford at least 400 cubic feet of airspace for each occupant over 12 years of age, and 200 cubic feet for each occupant 12 years and under. Every sleeping room shall have a minimum ceiling height of 7 feet, and no greater number of sleeping occupants than the number established by the application of these standards is permitted in any sleeping room. So a sleeping room, Jeannie, could be the bedrooms, obviously. It could be the front porch where you might have a day bed, the living room where you have a pull-out futon, or a loft above garage or bonus room, where people are putting beds. They'll do this calculation where you claim to have sleeping rooms. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, the next tab is a summary of feedback on STRs. We kind of broke it out on residents in favor of the ordinance and those that have concerns about the ordinance, and basically put it into various buckets. We've collected north of 80 some emails, and this reflects the email feedback we received. I'm not going to cover it in detail at all. If it's, I think, as I recall, just as an order of process, Amy, the emails that we get, they also get forwarded to the supervisors. Is that correct?
All the emails I receive go to the Plan Commission along with the supervisors, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. There is one item just relative to additional feedback that I want to provide, especially since, the board is not meeting again until April, and if you're going somewhere warm and on a beach, I want to provide some opportunity to give you some extra reading, Mr. Warfel.
I wish I was.
And Amy, did you provide him the document?
Yep, the document everyone
Okay,
has
there's
on
a
their
document
desk.
titled Analysis of STR Lodging Room Tax and Related Economic Activity in the Town of Sevastopol. And Mr. Chairman, this is as a result of a question you had regarding shoulder season and revenue and that sort of thing. And so the question is, what is the room tax impact of lodging in the town by month? And again, the sources are the monthly reporting collections report from the Door County Tourism Zone Commission. The Tourism Zone Commission also publishes a report on available rooms, occupancy rate, and average daily rate, or ADR. The Door County Tourism Zone Commission does not provide splits on collections by lodging type or occupancy by lodging type. And that's typically to maintain confidentiality, especially in our town, given the number. It's too small relative to, if you will, hide a larger populations. However, the Door County Tourism Zone gave us the feedback that, on average, if you look at it countywide, STR room tax contributions represents 23% of all room tax collections. So that's basically the proxy we'll use in this analysis. From this information, we can determine the room tax collections during peak versus off-peak seasons and estimate the STR room tax contributions and the impact to the town's room tax. So on the page 3, 58% of the room tax impacts are really through June through August. That's when most of the room tax dollars are collected overall. It varies quite substantially. You can just see that, those room tax collections are high. Number one is that's your highest occupancy rate. If you look at it for the last several years, July is typically in the 74-75% occupancy. If I look at June, July, and August, it averages somewhere for our town about 68% occupancy. And again, this is based on tourism zone information. If we look at STR collections, assuming the 23% proxy share value that the Tourism Zone Commission provided, out of the $101,000 that we get from our share of room tax, our 30% share, basically 23,000 and some change would be associated with what STRs provide. And again, we can't provide a more granular number, just again because of confidentiality, but this is the one that Kim Roberts has said is a good proxy. And again, the more than half of those dollars are collected in that June through August timeframe. I mentioned that June through August timeframe because that in most cases where people have both longer minimum stays, and it's also where they charge higher rates. Typically the rate, if you look for Sevastopol in their ADR, between a shoulder season, December or January, and what you see in this 3-month window, there's close to almost a 2x dollar rate for what a room charges. So it's not just a factor of longer stays, it's the fact that they get almost twice the dollars when you look at it from the data that the Tourism Zone Commission provides. So the key question, that has been asked in many of our meetings is, will the town lose tax revenue in off-peak season because of the proposed ordinance? And that's where the next page provides some information that might be helpful to do some more deeper dives. And I think likely no, because there's a minimal preference for lodgers to only prefer short-term rentals. And there's 2 studies that I want to highlight. The first is the Economic Policy Institute, which is a think tank in Washington that provides advocacy information to municipalities and governments. And it's titled The Economic Costs and Benefits of Airbnb or Other Platforms Like Them. I want to talk specifically to traditional lodging, and they cite 2 studies. The first is the Gutentag study. And basically their direct question was to the survey respondents, thinking about your most recent Airbnb stay, if Airbnb or other similar person-to-person paid accommodation services like VRBO did not exist, what type of accommodations would you have most likely used? And in that survey, only 2% said they would not have made the trip. In other words, other lodging is acts as a perfect substitute for them. So only 2% would say, geez, I really wanted to go to Sea Cave Point, but since there's not a short-term rental available that I like to stay in, I guess I'll go to Bay Beach instead. The second study is from Morgan Stanley Research in 2017. They did a separate survey, basically reported the near identical findings, and they had a 2 to 4% range, and that's because they did their survey in multiple years. And in essence, Airbnb doesn't affect tourism, their state. It basically shifts transients from hotels to residential zones. I think the Morgan Stanley research piece is important, and it's important for this key reason. Morgan Stanley, as you know, is an investment bank, along with having a research arm. Morgan Stanley is one of the prime underwriters for the Airbnb IPO, initial public offering. So they have a fiduciary responsibility, according to the rules of the SEC, to provide accurate and objective information relative to people that might be prospective stock owners and might purchase a stock of Airbnb. Morgan Stanley was a large shareholder of Airbnb in its pre-IPO days. There's also a more recent study that I haven't been able to locate yet, which basically updates this same survey information, again, regarding whether or not people would stay or not stay based on whether a short-term rental will be available. What's key, both in the Economic Policy Institute findings, is if someone can basically just move and say, well, if an SCR is not available, I'll go to a bed and breakfast. Oh, if not, I'll go to a lodge, or no, I'll go to a hotel. That also means not only do they stay at that hotel, the town or municipality also gets the benefits of them going to the grocery store, going to a bar, going shopping, etc. So you get the other knock-on benefits, or what economists term positive externalities associated with what a lodger might do. The other question that was looked at in this Morgan Stanley study research study is they looked at what is the makeup of the people that stay or that use Airbnb. And it's of note because a lot of feedback has been given, well, the reason we have STRs or our STRs are valuable is it provides an option for people with lower incomes. So this question was asked of all the survey respondents in the Morgan Stanley study. Again, this is over multiple years. 73% of Airbnb renters have an annual income of $75,000. Okay. By comparison, only 33% of non-Airbnb lodging renters have an income of that level. And also, it's just as a benchmark, it's important to note that per capita individual income in the state of Wisconsin is $33,375, and it's $61,747 per household for a household level income. So you can see, you know, almost 3/4 of Airbnb people make much more than an average household does, or median household does in the state of Wisconsin, clearly much more than an individual income, almost by a factor of 2. So the question is, are Airbnb and similar platforms a low-cost alternative? You know, by this data for over multiple years, I think that calls that into, you know, the question or begs, you know, further information that can support that.
This document, which I have a copy of, is the board getting this electronically? This particular one?
Oh, we had a handout.
Okay, the only reason I mention it is I did go out and print the Economic Policy Institute, which I think is 20-some pages.
Yes, we got that.
Okay, and the second one, the Morgan Stanley, I read online, but I could not, no matter what I tried, I could not print it. So if we figure out a way to do that, that might make it easier for some people on the committee. But that's just a footnote. Anyway, good information.
All right, with that and covering and having a draft ordinance, which we'll get to review in detail, the other big question was how do we manage this ordinance? How do we operationalize it? We have limited town resources. We want to ensure timely enforcement when concerns are raised. There's a seasonality factor associated with STR management, and there's also a certain amount that requires on-site presence in managing that. So what I'd like to do is introduce Granicus Host Compliance, just real briefly in the next tab, just to give you some feedback on who they are and what they do. Granicus is as a company, on page 2, they basically provide online services for governments across the country, improve customer service, automate workflows for a lot of agency work that reaches out to constituents. Around 2000, I want to say 17, I can confirm that date, Granicus acquired Host Compliance. Host Compliance is a leading technology service provider that does STR maintenance and management activities. Host Compliance was born in Silicon Valley, just like Airbnb was. And Host Compliance came into being because the city of San Francisco, which is where Airbnb got its start and had its largest footprint, the city was having a hard time collecting room tax revenues from Airbnb hosts. And so they used their application expertise, artificial intelligence, basically to find ways that they could search and what we call web crawl, basically go to websites, capture all the data, store it in the cloud, and then basically, you know, feed it back relative to giving the town or giving the municipality information on multiple occupancy, number of rooms that they might rent, as well as information based on the feedback that people would post on the comment section. They would take that comment section information and then be able to determine when those people stayed at those places. San Francisco had many challenges because they had manual enforcement of their ordinance. And so many of the people that had short-term rentals in San Francisco actually knew when the enforcement agents were going online to look at their websites to make sure they were compliant. And they would quickly go online, change 10 people to 6, The enforcement agents can say, oh, they got 6, they're good to go, that's what they signed up for. And then later on, they would come back and change it back to 10 on their listing. And so what Granicus Host Compliance does is they scrub 50-plus platforms. So Airbnb, VRBO, Travelocity, Craigslist, and 40-some others. They do it a minimum of 3 times a week. So that's how they can capture that information. When they did our initial assessment, when we asked them in October, they knew how many STRs we had last year, they knew how many we had the year before, and they knew the variance in growth rate over the last few years. Again, storing this information in the cloud is cheap, so they basically have been scrubbing Airbnb and these other platforms for many years, and basically has the data that's just available for them to monetize whenever a municipality wants to basically get in the game. So they have a lot of that data already. Page 3 kind of shows the various municipalities, large and small, that use them. If you look closer to home, they're in Madison and in Dane County. City of Green Bay use them actually on the room tax collection side. Village of Williams Bay in Walworth County, town of Holland, Sheboygan County, and the town of Rome in Adams County. I mentioned the town of Rome. Since they are a small town, they have roughly a 3,000, 4,000 person population. They're very similar to the town of Sevastopol, so it was important for us to benchmark somebody who is our size as opposed to, hanging out with San Francisco, users and seeing how it works for them. So we found a town, Wisconsin, that's about our size. They have re-upped and are using it in their second year. Based on their feedback, they gave us good guidance as to what modules we should use, and those are the ones I'll speak about next. All in all, they've gotten very good feedback, relative to their software and how their tool is effective. Page 4 just kind of overlays some of the challenges with STR compliance monitoring. Right, the rental listings change. There's multiple websites that they can post them on. Trying to manually monitor hundreds of properties that change seasonally is practically impossible. There's address data that are hidden from the listings to make it time-consuming to find if you're trying to find it manually, and I've experienced that, trying to just find websites just for our list of 65 here in our town. And it helps make sure that any compliance monitoring that's done is done uniformly, because you want to make sure that any complaints that you manage, it doesn't have any risk of being seen as selective enforcement. So they have those sorts of concerns that they want to make sure that they can manage as well. There's 4 modules that we're have in our kind of budget straw man. One is address identification, which provides the detailed address information for all the properties, and in all these cases, typically as well, they also capture screenshots of the various websites that people use. There's compliance monitoring, which makes sure that the information on the sites and the sites themselves are active. And also if new ones come online or show up, they'll basically be able to see those and then basically alert the town that there's a new STR that's online, and for us to be able to follow up to see that they have the proper information. Now the follow-up is not basically Granicus sending the town clerk, sending Amy a note. A lot of their stuff is automated, so if they see that there's a new STR that hasn't been known, what Host Compliance and Granicus will do with us is we basically create the templates of a letter that says, hey, looks like you're a new STR, here's the things you need to do, and that can just be automated. And as part of that automation process, that information also then becomes part of an active file of information. So if we have an audit, if there's actions the town needs to take, that's all documented and audit trailed along the way, including the responses that come from the STR owner. So I think that part in the automation is very helpful, since it doesn't add operations burden to the town staff as much as possible. The rental activity, just make sure that anytime there's rental activity, we're able to get that monitored and active as well. And the one we'll spend the most time on is the dedicated hotline. The next few pages basically just shows the software subscription service. Again, this is software. We buy these modules on an annual basis and renew it just like any other software option that you would get, whether it's and it is done on an annual basis. I won't go through that in detail. If you do have questions, I can try to answer them as much as possible. But we got this draft agreement, so as necessary, we could forward it to outside counsel to review and see if there's any questions they have relative to the standard purchasing processes that the town has. So if we look at enforcement on that presentation, we'll cover STR visibility, the 24/7 hotline, and then part-time enforcement. Again, there's 3 modules that help us provide visibility to short-term rentals within the town. One is the address identification. They basically give us a spreadsheet that we first populate with parcel information, address information, and then they have analysts that basically scrub that list to make sure that we have all the properties that we think we have and additional ones that they might identify that we could confirm with them. Again, the compliance monitoring, checks all the various websites and the activities to make sure that the information is accurate and up to date relative to what we are going to require as part of the ordinance. And then the rental activity monitoring basically looks at occupancy and rental frequency and potential issues, especially if there's new owners that come online that we have to make sure we provide and update them to make sure that they are compliant with the ordinance. Page 4 is the 24/7 hotline process. One of the key features that Granicus Host Compliance provides is a way for residents to call a number, an 800 number or a single number, local number, to raise a concern. And this flow chart just basically looks at the flow. Just a couple of things. Number one is all this information is documented and captured. And that includes if you have photographs of where, a driveway is being blocked, if garbage is overflowing, pictures can be taken with links provided by Granicus during the call so that they can be added again to the case file, if you will, relative to the incident. All the audio from the phone calls, whether it's with the concerned resident or whether it is the sheriff's department that they may call on our behalf, or whether it's the owner of the STR or the local agent that is acting as the local representative if the owner is out of town. All that is documented. And then basically the process goes through, and one of the key things is the resident can remain anonymous if they so choose. So when they call, they'll ask them if they want to provide their name. If not, they can remain anonymous. And as part of this process, for the different tree of concerns that someone might have, the Granicus 24/7 hotline will also allow and ask them, the resident, if they would like a callback. So in 30 minutes, would you like a callback to get a status or an update, or for host compliance to call back and say, hey, has the noise problem been resolved? Have they moved the cars so that so you have a clear access out? Those sorts of things. And again, all that is documented as part of the process for the case file for each incident that comes into the 24/7 hotline.
So if I understand this, if we identify one or two items that are strictly enforceable by the county, for example, fireworks is one that comes to mind. Someone blowing off fireworks, neighbor calls in to complain it's late at night, whatever the case might be, that call would be directed, directed directly to the sheriff.
Correct. In our call tree process, we could have them call the sheriff directly. I believe the other instance of calling a public enforcement entity is if someone had an illegal fire pit.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Burning a fire without an enclosed space, say on the sand dunes or whatever. That would be one. In that case, they would call the City of Sturgeon Bay Fire Department.
Okay.
So there's going to be those cases, and again, they have They have a case specialist that will work with us on our call tree for those different types of things, noise, pets, trash, parking, et cetera, and be able to manage that. Okay. Any questions from any of the supervisors? Okay. Lastly, we can't do enforcement all online. And again, this feedback was very helpful, and we got this from Walworth County. Walworth County, in their county-wide ordinance, basically employs a retired sheriff's deputy that acts as their STR enforcement person. And for a resource profile, we're looking at someone either working in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, Reserve, retired law enforcement, or City of Sturgeon Bay may have a resource through the police department. So there's some options there that we're doing some further research on. I believe, Linda, the village of Sister Bay uses Sheriff's Department resources?
Yes, I do have a call out to one of the other Door County municipalities who does use the Sheriff's Reserve on occasion for enforcement purposes. I have not heard back from them yet, though.
Okay. So activities for an in-person part-time resource, and again, this is part-time, is to do in-person follow-up calls on the 24/7 hotline. I think an example would be overcapacity, that you can't check online. That might, and it's also something that isn't necessarily time-sensitive that you can, follow up the next day if it's something that gets called in the night. Overcapacity is one. Follow up on properties that may not have been registered as a short-term rental and got a license, and that basically is to be able to go on site and just kind of confirm and get additional information. Audits on properties confirm ordinance compliance, such as overcapacity, and that's a typical one that Walworth County does. And then writing citations. I think that's part of our process we still have to refine relative to, who issues the citations. The Sheriff's Department can't issue citations for the town. That's a town function, but depending on how the contracting is done, if they're basically doing it on behalf of the town, that's, I think, something we just have to clarify. And from time to time, there may be a review of websites that aren't monitored by Granicus. I just want to refer quickly back to page 4 on the STR, on the hotline process. If you look at the lower left, the 3 top complaints that the host compliance, Granicus handles, 80% are noise, 10% relate to parking, 5% relate to trash, and the other types of issues are the remaining 5%. So Granicus host compliance provides capabilities to automate most enforcement and compliance operational activities, included automated follow-up to STR owners as needed. For the first time, residents have a 24/7 hotline providing the ability for them to report concerns with a process that provides a documented audit trail for the town to review incidents and determine follow-up action. Part-time enforcement is going to be resources to be used to provide the ability to perform on-site audits or in-person incident follow-up to ensure ordinance compliance. The next page kind of just gives a breakdown of the initial cost estimation. And again, we did this with the help, again, of Walworth County. This format, they don't use Granicus, but basically the rest of the format is basically from data that they used in doing their roll-up for their ordinance. Initially, the Walworth County's ordinance had a license fee of $900, and I believe after a year of implementation, I believe their license now is roughly around $600 annually. Most of the 2 biggest items are basically the part-time resource. And again, we have estimated that, at $17 an hour and 300 hours. The page, there's another page, I think, that's before the tab that kind of gives an estimation of how that resource would be spread around the months, obviously, during the peak months where you'd have most of the enforcement effort. And again, that, depending on what we have for a total budget, we'll basically apply those hours since we have flexibility how we can apply those labor hours. The second largest line item is basically town legal counsel for any legal efforts that we need during the first year, and then the rest, basically operational activities for publication, legal notice, copying, et cetera. We have a certain amount of admin relative to the building inspector. As I said, probably our building inspector costs are likely going to be relative to us rectifying and clarifying what the building permit and building records state for, say, number of rooms or bedrooms, and any support we might need from the county sanitarian. And then relative to helping get a range of cost estimates, we have the Granicus software subscription down below the annual subscription, and the range is based on STRs and listings. Some of their software options are just based on the number of physical addresses that exist, like compliance monitoring on those specific addresses. But the fact that if they're monitoring websites or where someone may just all of a sudden appear as an STR out of the blue that hasn't been licensed, they actually need to look at the listings, and somebody may be listed on multiple websites. Someone may be on both Airbnb and VRBO. They may have 4 cottages and have 4 separate listings for the cottages that might be at the single physical address. So that's where, in many cases, you have more listings than you actually have physical addresses, because they may be on multiple platforms. So with that range of numbers and the cost estimates, we basically are in a range of somewhere between $475 to $503, and the Plan Commission just basically, went with a $500 number as our starting point. We also took a shot at cost estimates for renewals, and basically made an estimate of what the costs associated with the renewal activities on an ongoing basis may be. And that looks like that gets us, close to a $400 or a little bit less range. My guess is after we get a year under our belt, I think that, the biggest, again, cost estimate there is the $5,100 for part-time enforcement resource, and my guess is that could go down substantially, is just based on the kind of feedback that Walworth County had on their enforcement efforts. So I'll pause there to see if there's any questions, supervisors. Okay, with that, I think we can move right straight to the ordinance itself. And Mr. Chairman, is there a way that you'd like to do this? Would you just like to go section by section and see if the supervisors have questions, and we'll just do it on an exception basis?
I'm gonna make the assumption that since they had this as pre-read, that they've had an opportunity to review this from a time perspective, and if there's some specific question on, we have every line numbered, that you ask the question, and we'll go directly to it versus going through it, because I think everybody should have had a chance to look at it and develop a question or two of their own. So whoever would like to do that, start that process. Linda,
I don't have any questions.
I didn't think you did, but.
We're on draft number 8, so I don't have any questions.
That's it?
How about our guest supervisor,
Guest or ghost?
the ghost? Jeannie?
Ghost fell asleep. No, I'm just kidding. I had my mic off so I could turn the volume up, so pardon me, it took me a minute. No, I don't, I think it's extremely thorough and detailed, and I have no questions right now.
No questions of the draft, all right? I've been through it numerous times. Leaves Mark and Derek, either of you, any specific questions as it relates to the draft ordinance?
No, the 10 previous meetings I've attended have answered all those.
It's all right to be there, you'll get questioned on it, and at least you're familiar. Mark, how about you?
I'm going through right now give me 1 minute, please.
Tell you what, Mark, take a minute and look through it. We'll go on to the resolution, just the proposed fees, and come back to you in a minute or two.
Yeah. One of the things we did to try to make the administration easier is relative, as opposed to trying to renew a ordinance and update it based on how the fees would change. We basically created a fee resolution so that, we would change software modules as we reduce cost and, and reduce any legal fees that might be planned or the part-time enforcement resource. We could do that in a resolution at the town board level and just, reflect that in our ongoing operations.
Okay.
So that resolution basically just ties our ability to update fees on a more manageable basis for the town.
Okay, that sounds fine.
Line 7, the penalties.
Section 7? you mean?
Section 7, sorry,
No problem.
the penalties. Who decides that? $100, no more than $1,000? Who, is this, does the board, are we gonna have a separate,
Yes, that would be the board.
is that gonna be our board, is that gonna
Yes.
be the plan commission?
No, that's the town board.
Okay.
I think Derek had a question.
I apologize. Just kind of curious, listening over the scientist information, seeing it as a software that we might be having purchased, I just took a brief look at it online. There's actually a lot of interesting sections to that software that the town might be able to use, and it might be cheaper if you bundle subscriptions, and maybe it's something that the technology committee should maybe look at before you guys decide to.
Nice try, Derek.
I'm just saying.
I have to say that Hugh has spent so much time with this company and the nuances and has gone back and forth with them that at this point I would trust his recommendation in terms of where they're going. I know it's very involved because I started going to these meetings myself and there was a lot there, but I think they've culled it down to the vital few and kind of go with it from there.
Looking at the software, it's an interesting software, and like I said, it might benefit actually this town, given other services.
Yes, there are other services that Granicus provides. So for example, things like the way municipalities list their ordinances online, they have a similar sort of tool. So they have a lot of tools, that can be used for administering a municipality. And those I'm not, familiar with. My focus is specifically on the host compliance piece. So if Derek's got big eyes relative to other software he'd like to buy, that might be probably out of my realm.
The purpose of this too, Derek, is just to close the loop with you, is that to give the Plan Commission an opportunity to go back and rethink, adjust, or tweak whatever needs to be done. So they have an upcoming meeting, and you would be more than welcome to share your thoughts and concerns at that Plan Commission level.
Personally, I'm designing of one piece of the software that I would like to add on to it personally.
I'm sorry, I have a tough time hearing them.
There's just, one part of the software that's interesting that, I'll talk to you more about it later.
Okay.
We'll stay on focus.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry about it.
All right. Anything else, Mark, on your end at the moment?
Line 136, 137 on page 3. Item F there, the trash pickup day.
Yep.
You with me there? Hugh?
Yes.
That's not only concerned with these STRs, but that's with people that live here and, weekend stays that own residents. My dad and I dealt with that. I'm still dealing with it at the park, at the boat launches. That one to me is huge. The trash pickup, it's ridiculous that people are driving down the road throwing it in our dumpsters or in our park or at the boat launch. The toilets at the porta-johns at the beach. And those, I'm not just saying it's short-term rentals, these are people that own property here that go home on Sundays. So that's one that kind of irks me a little bit, that we need to really let these people know. They have to, bold print, where does the garbage go? What do they do with it when they're done? You know,
Yep. Okay.
Okay, we want to go on to your implementation timetable view?
Yes, the next tab is implementation timeline. And again, this is a straw man where we have, you know, pretty firm dates, you know, through the end of February. We have a plan commission meeting, that's next week, Tuesday, I believe.
Tuesday, yes.
So any questions or things that the board asks us to follow up, we'll do that in our session next Tuesday and make sure we have that information or updates available for the April meeting when the board returns. The timeline basically you know, is gated primarily about, you know, M9, which is, you know, what the board's final decision will be. We have worked with Granicus to understand, you know, what modules, you know, need to be done in order, in their specific order. They actually have provided us the template already for loading the parcel information. I think I've provided that to Amy and Linda, and, you know, again, some of that stuff we can kind of preview just to see if we have a lot of that information already that we can actually pull out of the land record site and just populate the Excel spreadsheet that way. The only other activity that's really not kind of listed here with the application process is pulling the property record information. I mean, that could be done ahead of time, and that'll just save, you know, lead time, you know, relative to looking at that and just seeing if there's properties where we might have to engage with a building inspector to get a, you know, an expert opinion on number of bedrooms and that sort of thing. So I think that's probably, you know, something that we could plan maybe in that April timeframe just to kind of preview what that will be. I think since we've looked at the websites that are active and the POUTs, we kind of know the properties that are at risk relative to overcapacity. There may be some discussions we may have ahead of time just to provide additional early notice, you know, since that is probably going to be a concern we might want to address as early as possible. You know, I would hope that because of these activities, those folks kind of know who they are. You know, they can look online at their properties. They know what their, you know, septics are designed for and what their POUTS capacity, you know, should be, or if not, who to contact. I think that's probably the biggest concern I have for some STR owners when they get the application back and they were used to having 12 and now the application says no, 6. You know, that's going to be sticker shock, and I think we want to make sure we mitigate that as quickly as possible by giving them a heads up on that. The last tab is basically the draft application process. So we've kind of started just to kind of give you a view of what that looks like. And I think these are the kind of things we'll probably review with the Plan Commission some more next week. And, you know, be able to, again, get additional feedback. Basically provides, you know, the information to designate the property owner, who their resident agent is if they are not local or outside the 75-mile range, which is in the ordinance for them to be able to be active, you know, getting the information like phone contact. That was the biggest lesson learned from the town of Rome in their implementation, is making sure that the phone number that the property owner gives you is actually one that works for calling. And then add parcel information in there as well. The next page basically provides a checklist of things to help guide them with the things they need to provide for an application. For someone who is a STR owner in good standing, they have a Door County Tourism Zone permit. They should have a DATCAP license, so nothing should be a surprise there. You know, we've asked them that to create a diagram of the property and then also show where parking, off-street parking would be. We're going to add that to our FAQ document. The Door County Land Record site has a great tool for someone to, you know, to show their parcel on a PDF with the nice yellow lines. And, you know, it can be just utilizing that, printing that out, you know, marking up where, you know, 4 cars park here,
Right.
off-street, that sort of thing. Just something simple, as well as having it, you know, in their book as well, so people know what the property boundaries are and they can respect them. That's, again, those sorts of checklist items are in this application draft that Linda graciously put together. In addition, we've done a draft website page that kind of just talks about short-term rentals, kind of highlights what the ordinance has as requirements, and then basically kind of walks people through the application process with with links that can take them to other information, whether it's a Door County tourism zone, whether it's DAC, whether they might have questions from the county sanitarian. And, you know, we would work with Amy and the website meister to determine, you know, things like, you know, okay, I want to have a hot link for the 24/7 hotline. We really should put this on the homepage. You know, basically do kind of a website layout relative to, you know, critical links and shortcuts to make it easier for residents to get access to the information that they need, as well as short-term rentals. We've taken a stab at an FAQ document. Again, we kind of leveraged some of this from both the town of Rome and Walworth County. You know, those have been municipalities that are, you know, 3 and, you know, 2 and 4 years running, you know, with an operational ordinance. So they've been very gracious with their feedback and lessons learned, and it'll help us relative to hit the ground running relative to this information. And then lastly, we have a letter, kind of just a draft letter that, you know, the property owner can use and edit relative to, as part of our ordinance, we require that they notify neighboring residents to their property with their property rules and contact information. So this is just kind of a draft letter that they can use as part of their communication process to their neighbors. Mr. Chairman, that's the
Well, you did yeoman's job on it. I mean, you've certainly been
Information.
thorough, and I know you and Linda have worked through this as well as the committee on trying to put together the documents that will make it easy for the town to implement it and easier for someone who's in the business of renting. And I think the only footnote you're probably gonna have to worry about is guys like me who don't realize what an embedded hot link is unless it's actually got the address. We had to figure that out.
Okay.
All right, a little behind the times. But I guess the question is what questions are left from the board? I know that some of us have been through this numerous times, but if there's anything that comes up either tonight or you come away tomorrow and you want to know, we need to get that feedback back to the committee so that they can resolve it.
Yeah. There is one change that we're probably going to put into the draft that Linda and I discussed, and it's just, it's based on a follow-up. We know that prevention is worth a pound of cure, and we've noticed that in most of the online platforms, they have a section called house rules. And so what we would like to do is amend the ordinance to basically make sure that in their online listings, they list a subset of the house rules or property rules, as we talked about, in the house rules section on the website. Things like, what's the maximum capacity?
You mean a link that will come in with the VRBO or Airbnb?
Yes.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yep.
For example, I went through all the websites that are active in the town, and out of the 46 that were active, only 4 talked about quiet hours, and mostly in an informal way. Only 2 out of the 46 talked about parking, right? Only 0 talked about trash, okay? And those are the top 3 24/7 issues that Granicus, deals with on a 24/7. And the more that you can educate the renters up front as they're going through a listing, as opposed to something that's buried in a property rules book at the house, or buried in the terms and condition language on the website. Most of the property owners list the maximum overnight guests. Many of them, for example, VRBO establishes a minimum age requirement for the primary renter, for example. So VRBO has 6 standard house rules, and then, they can customize those and add additional ones. So I think we were talking about the minimum nights, the maximum occupancy, the quiet hours, the pet management, about leash and not left unattended at the property. And there was one more, the quiet hours, parking, and establishing how many parking spaces they have. So, that sort of information, again, if you make it available online on the website that the residents can use, it also makes sure it avoids any of the questions, I didn't know that I had to do that, or I didn't know, I didn't know there were quiet hours. The fact that if you can establish what those are up front, and when they're viewing the website, the more it just makes it easier to communicate and easier to follow up.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions from anyone? Any feedback?
Just that the Plan Commission will be meeting on Tuesday, February 23rd, 5:30, again, to just go through things and take another look at the ordinance. And
Okay. I am thinking that the week of May 10th is probably when I would try and schedule a hearing, a week prior to our meeting. I want to give as many people an opportunity to enjoy a COVID shot prior to that time. And hopefully the government doles out enough for everybody. Makes life a little easier for all of us. So,
week of May 10th,
yes.
and would this be an evening meeting, I would imagine?
Yes. We'd start reasonably early,
Like 6 p.m.?
6 p.m. Okay, thank you very much, Hugh. I appreciate all the hard
Thank you.
work and everything that you went through and helped us better understand it. All right, let's move back here to our agenda and see if we can finish before midnight. Basically, we're down to the financial reports, which you have in your packet, the budget versus actual, transactions by date, and we have, I'm sure, the treasurer's report. We have a little, anything to add to this?
Yeah,
Ms.
the
Roth?
February settlement checks will be sent out tomorrow for 2021. We are at 69.5% of our tax levy receipts, which consequently was the same as last year at this time.
Oh, really?
Unlike 2019, we stayed within our snow budget, snow removal budget. We budgeted 130,000, and we only used 55,500. The spring primary election will take place tomorrow, February 16th, 2021. Polls open at 7 a.m. and they close at 8 p.m. And the auditors will be in the office next week.
Okay, and we've gotten all the bills then finalized from the county for plowing,
For 20,
not 2020.
correct.
Oh, that's great news. It's not often we do that. All right. Need a motion to approve the financial.
Linda has a
report. Whoops,
question.
sorry, back up.
So the $13,000 bill that was in the voucher list, was that for 2020 or 2021?
The 13,000
I believe it
was
was 13.
for 2020.
Okay, so that's included
that's
in
in-
the 55 that
Correct.
you just mentioned? Wow.
We did very well.
Great.
Mother
Right.
Nature did very well.
Motion to accept the financial reports.
I'll move to accept the financial reports for January 2021.
Motion by Linda, second by Mark. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Approval of vouchers, bills, and claims, January 19th through the 15th. Did the ghost get a chance to sign them too?
She did.
You did? Okay. Then we would need a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers, bills, and claims, January 19th, 2021 through February 15th, 2021.
And we have a motion by Mark and a second by,
I'll second that.
she's there, thank you. Second by Jeannie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried, thank you. I don't think we have any oral committee or commission reports, if I'm correct. All right, we kind of covered that ground. You also have in your packet Door County inspections for the month. And he continues to do a good job. We owe him $4,000, we'll pay him, okay. And we're down to correspondence, which fortunately for tonight is a very light night in correspondence. You have copies of the permitted establishments as of November for room tax. You also have a listing of, not a listing, but a numerical total on the Door County Sheriff's incident reports. For whatever reason, our town continues to always lead in the number of incidents, month over month. I wish Nassau would overtake us. So 289 calls for police protection. So it's a lot, big town. Also, there is a copy of a note that Linda prepared as part of our road tour work in 2021. We're going to look at doing a Shoreside Drive. It's a dead-end street that is not currently on our road summary, and that's a problem for the plow to get down there. So we're working through getting that surveyed, and we'll probably tackle that as part of our road work this year to provide a cul-de-sac at the end of the street. Involves some people making changes to their lot lines as well, so we're working on that. Lastly, you have the Sturgeon Bay Fire Department's report for the month, and that's everything in correspondence. So, that leaves us with some announcements, which I think we already heard one of, which is there's a primary election for state superintendent tomorrow, February 16th. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'll bet Amy's going to be elated about that. Plan Commission report, meeting, February 23rd at 5:30. The spring election is April 6th. Again, the polls are open from 7 to 8 p.m., 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Our next Board of Supervisors meetings will be on April 19th at 7 p.m. And we will have our annual town meeting on April 20th, starting at 6 p.m. And that pretty much does it for tonight's activities. A motion to adjourn might be in order.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
I
motion by
will
Derek,
second that.
second by Mark to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.